What's going on, guys? Got another review for you. What we got here, as you can see, is a Spyderco. And as many of you who have seen some of my previous videos know, I've mentioned I'm a fan of budget knives. That is not specifically loyal to any one manufacturer. As I've said, I'm willing to try anything. I just wanted to preface with this. I've had this knife multiple times. I have lost one of these knives. I have sold one of these knives. And I have one more right here. The knife in question, as you can see, is the Spyderco Tenacious. This is the plain edge G10 version. As you know, I like a more heavy-duty, bulkier knife. They do make this knife in a lightweight version. I have never handled it. I know it comes with Spyderco's FRN scales. Outside of that, I have no idea what the difference is. The liners may be different, I'm not 100% sure. But this one is the G10 version with the full stainless steel liners. For your reference, the product code on this one is 122GBBKP. I'm wanting to say that I bought this knife from Blade HQ. I'm not 100% sure on that. I have ordered a few knives from Amazon here in the last little bit, but I'm wanting to say this one was purchased from Blade HQ. I wouldn't put any money on that, but I think it was. Regardless, I paid $56 for this knife. Excuse me. And as you can see, there's no knife in the box. Get this out of the way. Here's the knife right here. This is the Tenacious. This is one of Spyderco's budget line models, the made in China versions. And this is, I'm not 100% sure what all sizes they have. I think this is more of a medium to medium large size. I know there is at least one size under this. I do not remember what the name of that one is. And the Resilience, the Spyderco Resilience, is the budget model that's larger than this, and I think it is a full 4-inch blade. It's a large knife. This one has a 3.39-inch blade. Good EDC size blade for me anyway. I know some people like smaller knives. I prefer a bigger knife. This is in many ways what I would consider a gateway knife. People who have never really had a decent quality knife, you know, who have had gas station knives and flea market knives, stuff like that, stuff that no name, no real quality behind it. This is what I kind of recommend to people when they want to get a good, decent knife but don't want to spend a whole lot of money on it. I generally always recommend one of these. There are many good knives you can get nowadays. We're kind of in the golden age for knives. And I hate to say it, with a lot of the Chinese knives that are being produced now at such high quality levels, it's very, very easy to get a really good knife for not a lot of money. And this is a good example of that. This is one I normally recommend to people when they tell me they want a decent knife and don't want to spend just a whole lot of money on it. And not this knife in particular, but Spyderco's are really what got me into knives. That's kind of where I started at. If I remember correctly, one of the first, I say, real knives that I ever bought was a Spyderco Endura. I do not remember what size Endura it was, but it was one that really got me into it, and many of the first decent knives that I ever purchased because of that were Spyderco knives. But this knife in particular, I paid $56 for it. It's a good knife for that price. We'll come back to that. I want to touch on that again after I've got some of the details about this knife out of the way. As you can see, it's got Spyderco's leaf-shaped blade. I will not say that this is the best knife blade. It certainly is a very good knife blade. Shape, I should say. It lends itself very well to slicing. Not saying that that's all they're good for, but Spyderco's in general are very good food prep knives. Just because of the general shape of the blade, they excel at that. Normally most EDC tasks, this knife will be great for. This has a 3.9 inch blade. As I said, it's a leaf-shaped drop point blade. It's fully flat ground all the way from the very top of the spine all the way to the edge. And of course, it has Spyderco's, oh, Spidey. Oh, I messed up. There we go. It's got the Spidey hole. As much time as I've spent with Spyderco knives, you would think I would be better with them, but I'm not, and I'm ashamed of that. I'm sorry. On Spyderco's website and on Blade HQ, the coating on this blade is just listed as black coated. It doesn't specify what the coating actually is. As you can see right there, it says China. If I can get it to where there's not a reflection on there. It says China on the blade, but I guess I would prefer them do it like that as opposed to some other manufacturers who have put a giant made in China billboard somewhere on the side of the knife. At least it's fairly subtle right there. And on this side you can see it says 8CR13 MOV. A good old 8CR. I have found from use, not with this knife specifically, but with my previous Tenacious, the coating that they use on this blade is not as durable as the coating that comes on the higher end Spyderco's, the US golden collar made Spyderco's. I do not know what this coating is. For a general work knife, beater knife, this is perfectly fine. I don't need this knife to be a showpiece. I don't need it to be fancy. If this coating were to rub off tomorrow, it would not bother me. This coating will wear much faster than the other Spyderco's coating. I'm wanting to say most of Spyderco's other knives are a DLC coating. This one I would hesitate to say is some type of paint or enamel. It does wear very quickly, and it has you can probably see it in the camera, it's got a sheen to it. It's kind of shiny. You don't get that with some other Spyderco's. Most of the other Spyderco's are a matte black style, almost a grayish finish, whereas this one looks sort of like a frying pan. Not that that's a problem, it's just an observation. This model, as I said, I did not get the lightweight model. This is the standard Tenacious. G10 scales, black G10 scales, both sides. It is a liner lock, as you can see there. Full steel liners all the way from tip to butt. And I don't know, because it's black on black, you can kind of see it there. They do mill out the liners to a good degree to try to save some weight. Pillar construction. And the good thing about Spyderco's, not all Spyderco's, most Spyderco's, as I've said in previous videos, I'm right-handed. I prefer right-hand tip-up carry. I do not remember with this knife if I had to swap the clip or not. I don't remember how it came from the factory. But this knife is four-way positionable. That means right hand, left hand, tip up or tip down. You can carry it in that manner. It's got mounting points here, 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 and here. So you can mount the clip wherever you need to suit your carry style. The handle on this one is I'll just call it, it's 4.45 inches. I'll just call it 4.5 inches overall. I've said in previous videos, I've got extra large hands according to glove size. And this knife, it fits in my hand good. I can get all 4 fingers on this knife fairly comfortably. I don't feel cramped. So unless you just have monstrous hands, I don't see where the size of the handle of this knife would be an issue for you. I know some people it will, but it should fit most people fairly good. And a thing I've noticed about the this budget series from Spyderco, the handle shape is very similar to some of the other knives, the made in America knives, but it's slightly toned down. Where it comes in here on some other knives like the military and the paramilitary, that will come in deeper, and then this arch would be more pronounced, and then that would come in deeper. This one to me just seems more smooth. It doesn't have as exaggerated flares in it, which is fine. They're all comfortable knives. Doesn't make a difference to me one way or another. It's just an observation that I've seen over the years. The overall length of this knife, open from tip to butt, is 7 3/4 inches. As I said, I think it's a good working size. I think it's a good overall EDC size for me anyway. My biggest gripe with most EDC knives, I like to be able to get a full 4-finger grip on my knife. A lot of knives, I can't do that on. I've made a previous video on the Civivi Elementum. I told everyone in the video, it is an outstanding knife, especially for the money. And it actually competes price point wise directly with this knife. These are both in the same price range. My only problem with the Elementum is I can roughly get 3 fingers on it. My pinky will just be dangling. Although for what I'm using the knife for, that's not that big of an issue. It just bothers me. So if I can, I prefer to be able to get a knife I can get a full 4-finger grip on, and this knife accommodates that just fine. You may be able to see it through this pivot up through the pocket clip mounting holes up here at the front. This knife does run on phosphor bronze. Typically in this price point, a lot of the time, especially with Chinese knives, you'll get Teflon washers. This one does have phosphor bronze washers. When I got this knife though, I haven't adjusted the pivot on this knife at all. The pivot is still the exact same as it was when it came from the factory. But this knife was bone dry. Bone dry. It was very gritty. I had to oil the pivot, get some oil in those washers, and really just run it back and forth. I oiled it up, and I sat here and did this for probably close to 2 hours to try to smooth it out. Now it's perfectly smooth. It runs just fine. It's not on bearings. It's never going to feel like it's on bearings. But for what it is and for the price point, it flicks just fine. It's a good knife. I think the overall weight on this knife is right around 4 ounces, maybe a hair over 4 ounces. Again, that is plenty reasonable for me for an EDC knife. Most of the time the knives I carry for EDC are 6, 7, sometimes pushing 8 ounces. I carry large knives. So this knife for me to carry is no problem, and I do carry this knife. This is a work knife for me. It's one that I can take to work, take out in the field, do what I need to do with, and if it gets broken or lost or in some other way I lose it, I'm only out $50. Now, I know $50 isn't, a laughable amount of money, but it's just something to think about. I would much rather lose this knife than lose, say, a Chris Reeve Sabenza. If I lost a Sabenza, I would cry. If I lost this knife, I would be mad for, 30 minutes, an hour while trying to find it, and then I would go buy another one. And I think that's what the appeal of this knife is. You get the Spyderco ergonomics, you get the Spyderco blade shape, you get the Spidey hole, you get almost all of what makes Spyderco lovable, but in a $50 package. And that's where this knife shines at. As you can see, I don't know if I mentioned it, the pocket clip, it's not a deep carry pocket clip, unfortunately, and that is because of how Spyderco does the mounting holes on the back. The hole that runs through the knife right here is the lanyard hole. And I've discussed my feeling on lanyards many times. Because of that lanyard hole being there and this rear torque screw all the way out at the very tail, there's really nowhere else they could put this pocket clip. It's mounted as reasonably low down as they could put it, which doesn't bother me, because in my line of work, everybody carries a knife, everybody's got a knife, it's no big deal. But, you know, if you work in an office or, you know, business setting of some type, you may not want a very noticeable, fair-sized knife hanging out of your pocket. And as this sits, I've got my finger flush with the top, you've got half an inch, maybe over half an inch of knife hanging out of your pocket as you walk around. That may be a deal breaker for some people. For me, it's not a big deal, just worth mentioning. Now, at the start of the video, I mentioned the price on this knife. $56 is what I paid for it. I'm sure you can find it cheaper if you shop around, find somewhere that's got a current discount code. At $56, I still believe this is a good knife. It does what it needs to do. Regardless of where it's made, it still comes with Spyderco's warranty. And it performs well, especially at its price point. But at $56, I feel like it's becoming more overpriced. Not saying it's not worth that money still. Obviously, this is my third or fourth one I have now. It's obviously worth money because I keep buying them. But if you look at other brands, like Civivi, like CJRB, the prices are getting very, very competitive. If they were to drop the price of this knife down to, you know, say $30, $35, something like that, it would very easily be one of my top picks in that price range. But at $56, many other companies, you're getting into D2 steel. And it's just hard. It's getting harder to justify paying effectively $60 for a knife that is still using 8CR13. 8CR13's an okay steel. Don't get me wrong. I've owned and used many knives that are 8CR. You're not going to break it. You're probably not going to bend it. But it's just not the best. Edge retention is lacking, in my opinion. You will have to sharpen this knife more, especially with hard use, than you would a comparable steel. I mean, even OS 8. OS 8 is a dated steel as well. I would take OS 8 over 8CR13. Especially from a company like SOG. SOG used a lot of OS 8 steel. I would take that over 8CR13. I'm not saying I want Spyderco to come out tomorrow with this knife, a Tenacious, in 154 cm or S30V. I don't want that, because then it's going to defeat the whole purpose of this knife. The purpose of this knife is to be a affordable working Spyderco knife. And as soon as they jump to a quote-unquote super steel, the price of this knife will double. and it's going to effectively defeat the purpose of it. But at $56, I would really, really, really like to see something updated. Like I said, preferably D2. D2 is kind of my go-to budget still now. Many other knives, such as the Civivi Elementum, are using D2. And the Civivi is $5 cheaper than this knife is. The Civivi, you're getting a knife with a D2 blade on bearings. And with this knife, you're getting 8CR13 on phosphor bronze. I'm not trying to detract from this knife. It is a great knife. But I just feel like it could use an update from Spyderco. Don't know if I didn't hit on anything. Obviously, it's a liner lock knife. You have full engagement of the liner. I'm holding it relatively flush with the camera right there. You can see in this front scale, you have a very generous cutout to access that liner lock. You will never fail to hit it. It is very easy to hit. Even with gloves on, about half the time I'm at work, I'm wearing gloves of some type, mechanics gloves or something of those sorts. I've never been able to fail to operate this knife one-handed with gloves on, because that really deep cutout right there to access the liner lock, and because of the spidey hole, it just lends itself very well to gloved hand work. Yeah, it's a good knife. I would highly recommend picking one up. I do think at $50 it's starting to be a little overpriced, but that still doesn't detract from the fact of what it is. It's still a great knife. It still performs. It does everything I want it to do. As you can see, I haven't had this knife long, but I've got a little bit of pocket clip wear going on right there, scuffing up, crawling around in the rocks with it hanging out of my pocket. But yeah, if you got any questions on the Spyderco, like I said, shoot me a message, leave a comment. I'd love to get back to you just as soon as I could. Yeah, if you got anything, let me know. Thanks.